In today's class, we will be discussing about the antihypertensive drugs, that is particularly the reserpine. In the previous class, we have seen the classification of different types of antihypertensive drugs, and we have also seen what is the biosynthesis of norepinephrine and different metabolites that are formed in and the different types of enzymes which are responsible for the metabolism of the norepinephrine. So in today's class, we will see the reserpine, which was used as a antihypertensive drug. So coming to the structure, so this is the structure of reserpine. So the basic heterocyclic ring system involved in this reserpine is the indole. So this particular part is called as the indole nucleus. So indole nucleus is the part of the reserpine. See, this reserpine acts as antihypertensive agent by acting on the storage vesicles and also it acts on the release of norepinephrine. So it acts on or it affects the release of norepinephrine from the storage vesicles, and it also acts on the storage vesicles. This is the storing of norepinephrine. So indole alkaloids isolated from the roots of Rauwolfia serpentina. So the biological source for this reserpine, biological source for reserpine is the roots of Rauwolfia serpentina. Rauwolfia serpentina is the biological source for the reserpine. So from these roots of Rauwolfia serpentina, we isolate this reserpine. So coming to the mechanism of action of this reserpine, as we have seen, see we have various targets. We have the receptors like alpha and beta receptors, and apart from that, the uptake inhibitors. Then apart from that, those drugs which act on the storage of norepinephrine, that is in the storage vesicles. So this reserpine acts it acts by replacing and as well as replacing and depleting the norepinephrine, which is the neurotransmitter in the adrenergic system. Okay, so it affects on the storage of this norepinephrine in the storage vesicles. So how it does is, it is doing by inhibiting the active transport. So it is affecting the storage vesicles, that is by inhibiting the active transport, that is the magnesium ATPase, which is responsible for the sequestering means storing of, sequestering Ne and dopamine in the storage vesicles. So this is the main action of reserpine on the norepinephrine. Okay, then the storage vesicles contain little. So when this happens, when this magnesium ATPase enzyme interferes with this transport of norepinephrine into the vesicles, then the norepinephrine is present in the cytoplasm itself. Okay, and which is responsible for what you call them as the metabolism by the different types of enzymes, that is mainly monoamino oxidase enzyme. And thereby when this happens, there is depletion of the norepinephrine and little availability of this norepinephrine at the particular receptor. So when little neurotransmitter is present, then it is inhibiting the transmission of impulse, and as well as the sympathetic tone is reduced. So here sympathetic tone is reduced, and which leads to vasodilation. So the ultimate goal is vasodilation and reduction in blood pressure. See, reserpine has the same effect on epinephrine storage in the adrenal medulla also. So this adrenal medulla also has the norepinephrine as the neurotransmitter. So this reserpine acts on the adrenal medulla to reduce the concentrations of norepinephrine. Okay. Same as seen in the peripheral neurons. So reserpine can enter CNS, where it also depletes the storage sites of this norepinephrine and as well as the serotonin. So CNS neurotransmitter depletion led to the use of reserpine in the treatment of certain even mental illnesses also. So this is the mechanism of action of reserpine. Then coming to the uses of reserpine, uses of reserpine. See, this reserpine is used in the management of mild to moderate hypertension, mild to moderate hypertension. Okay. Then due to its significant CNS adverse effects and its cumulative action in the adrenergic neurons, reserpine is rarely used because of the adverse effects on the CNS. This reserpine is rarely used. So what are the adverse effects which are seen with adverse effects of reserpine on the CNS? Okay, so these includes, that is mainly, as we told, that the side effects are mainly present or which are affecting the CNS. So the CNS effects include drowsiness, then fatigue and lethargy. These are the three CNS effects. Apart from that, the major side effect is mental depression. Okay, and this is the most adverse effect. And due to this adverse effect, that is suicidal attempts are commonly seen. Okay, so this is the one of the drug which acts on the storage of norepinephrine on the storage or on the storage vesicles, and as well as the depletion of the storage of norepinephrine. Okay, then you have the another class of drug which belongs to the same category, that is the guanethidine. Okay, it is a 8-membered compound. So it has 8 sites, and this is the compound side chain, that is guanethidine, or guanine is present. Guanethidine. So this is the structure of guanethidine. This is the structure of guanethidine. So mechanism of action of this guanethidine, it is an adrenergic neuronal blocking agent that produces a selective block of peripheral sympathetic pathways by replacing and norepinephrine. So this also uh, acts on the depletion of the norepinephrine or replacing the norepinephrine from the storage sites. Okay, and it does not have the one good advantage of this is it does not affect the stores of adrenal medulla. So, and when it does not act on adrenal medulla, all the CNS adverse effects will not be seen. Adverse effects not seen. Okay, so no suicidal attempts are seen with this guanethidine. Okay, and coming to the use of this guanethidine, so it is used in cases or in the treatment of moderate to severe hypertension. So moderate to severe hypertension are treated with the guanethidine. And then coming to the another class of there is another drug which belongs to the same class where it affects the storage of the norepinephrine, that is Guanadrel. So this is the structure of Guanadrel. This also has the guanidine moiety. So the guanidine moiety here in the side chain you can see. So this is the guanidine. Okay. So this guanidine is also present in case of guanidine. Okay. Another example where the drug effects on the storage sites, storage vesicles, they either deplete or prevent the storage of norepinephrine in the vesicles. Then coming to the another class of antihypertensive drugs, that is we call them as vasodilators. Okay, vasodilators. So these vasodilators, they relax smooth muscle in blood vessels and lead to the dilation. Okay, so first thing is these vasodilators relax smooth muscle, relax the smooth muscle in the blood vessels and lead to the vasodilation. And then the next effect is reduce in systemic vascular resistance, systemic vascular resistance, which will lead to fall in arterial blood pressure, arterial, this fall in arterial blood pressure. And apart from that, the third effect of these vasodilators is dilation of the venous vessels, dilation of venous vessels, which will lead to the decreased venous blood pressure, venous blood pressure. So these are the three effects that these vasodilators will contribute to the reduction of the blood pressure, are used in the treatment of the hypertension. So coming to the first class of agents, that is arterial vasodilators. Okay, arterial vasodilators. So these drugs mainly act on the arteries. Okay, so these arterial vasodilators acts mainly on the arteries. So systemic and pulmonary hypertension can be treated along with, so when they can be used in the treatment of systemic and pulmonary hypertension. apart from that, it can also be used for the treatment of heart failure and angina as well. Okay. So the coming to the action of these drugs, how these arterial vasodilators act. So these arterial vasodilators, they have effect on the arterial blood pressure. So they decrease the afterload on the left ventricles. So once they act on the left ventricle, they also enhance the stroke volume and cardiac output. Cardiac output. Thus, they also lead to reduced oxygen demand of the heart, and thus improve oxygen supply is to demand ratio. Demand ratio. So this is how the arterial vasodilators act. Then coming to the venous dilators, that is venous vasodilators acts on the venous blood vessels and reduce the blood pressure. So these venous vasodilators, they are used in the treatment of cardiovascular hypertension. So these venous vasodilators, they reduce venous pressure and thus decrease preload on the heart and also decrease cardiac output and capillary fluid filtration and edema formation. So when there is reduced capillary fluid filtration, then the changes in blood volume takes place, and thereby there is edema formation. Then the drawbacks of, what are the drawbacks of these vasodilators? So drawbacks of vasodilators. So we have mainly 3 drawbacks with the vasodilators. So what are the 3 drawbacks? So one is the baroreceptors. So baroreceptors are the receptors which are present on the aorta of the heart. So what these baroreceptors do is they are sensitive to changes in blood pressure. So when there is a vasodilation, that is vasodilation of the arteries and the veins, then automatically there is decrease in blood pressure, and these decrease in blood pressure are sensed by the baroreceptors, and thereby there is a reflex mechanism. So this reflex mechanism, what it does is it tries to bring back the or increase the blood pressure. So this is one important drawback. That is, when there is decrease in vasodilation and there is automatically these baroreceptors get activated and they lead to increase in BP, which is not a desirable one. Okay, and then the second important drawback is they impair the function of the baroreceptors. So normal functioning of baroreceptors, because now and then they try to bring back to the or they try to increase the blood pressure, but they are unable to cope up, and thereby their activity in sensing the changes in blood pressure will be impaired. And due to this, there is one orthostatic hypotension occurs. Orthostatic hypotension occurs. And then coming to the third drawback of these vasodilators, that is the renal retention. So renal retention of the sodium ions, and along with sodium ions, we know that water is also retained, and there is increase in blood volume, and this all together will lead to the increase in cardiac output. So which are all not desired in case of reducing the hypertension. So these are all the, so when there is increase in sodium ions, automatically there is increase in water, and if these two are increased, then there is an increase in blood volume. And as we know that one of the reason for increase in uh, hypertension or in hypertensive states is increased blood volume, and as well as there is also increase in cardiac output because of the reflex mechanism seen with these drugs. So then for us, the therapeutic drugs, we have two types of vasodilators. So vasodilators are two types. The first type is those drugs which act on the arterial blood vessels, and second category is those drugs which act on venous or the veins. Now coming to the direct acting vasodilators, direct acting vasodilators. So in this class we have the example, that is hydralazine, the structure of hydralazine. So thalazine is the basic nucleus here, and this thalazine has got the side chain, that is substitution here, that is hydrazine substitution. So this compound is known as hydralazine. Hydralazine. So coming to the mechanism of action of hydralazine. So this hydralazine has got the multiple direct effects on the vascular smooth muscle, which is commonly abbreviated as VSM. Okay, VSM, which stands for vascular smooth muscle. So this hydralazine is specific to the arterial blood vessels. We told we have two types of vasodilators which act on arterial blood vessels and which act on the venous blood vessels. This hydralazine acts on the arterial vessels. So the mechanism of action of this drug as an antihypertensive agent is because of three effects. The first effect is the hyperpolarization of VSM, that is vascular smooth muscle, and this leads to the prolonging of the opening of potassium channels. Okay. And due to the prolonging of the opening of potassium channels, it leads to vasodilation of arteries more than veins. So which is why we are calling this as hydralazine as the drug which acts on the arterial blood vessels. Then the second way by which it is going to act as the antihypertensive drug is inhibit the release of calcium ions. We know that calcium ions are very important in the muscle contraction. So here vascular smooth muscle. Then the third mechanism is formation of NO, that is nitrous oxide, by vascular smooth muscle, that is vascular endothelium. And we know that this NO is responsible for vasodilation. Okay, vasodilation. Here we have discussed the other compounds which act as vasodilators, that is organic nitrates in classes. Okay, so all these three effects, that's why we told that this hydralazine is having multiple effects, multiple direct effects on vascular smooth muscle. So what are these multiple effects? That is hyperpolarization of the vascular smooth muscle, which brings in the prolonging of opening of potassium channels, and this leads to vasodilation of arteries more than the veins. Then second is inhibition of release of calcium ions, and third is formation of nitrous oxide, which is responsible for the vasodilation. So these are the three ways by which this hydralazine acts on vascular smooth muscle. So because of these effects, there is decrease in systemic vascular resistance and as well as the arterial pressure. Then apart from that, so because there is vasodilation, then reflex mechanism comes into play, and which will lead to increase in heart rate, then cardiac output, and as well as stroke volume, along with the increased activity of plasmin renin system. So all these effects will contribute to the, so all these effects will contribute, that is reflex mechanism will contribute to the increase in blood pressure, which is not a desirable one. Okay. So it also, apart from this reflex mechanism, it also causes, that is increase in sodium ions and increase in water retention, then as well as expansion of blood volume, okay, blood volume. This also contribute to the increased blood pressure, which is not a desirable one. Okay. Then expansion of blood volume. So see these effects, that is the retention of water and sodium ions, because of this nature, it may lead to the development of tolerance of this drug during prolonged therapy. So if it is used as a drug for longer days treatment of hypertension, it may lose its activity because of these things, that is retention of sodium ion, water, and expansion of blood volume. Thus what we have to do is, if we need to continue this drug for a longer duration of time, then we should co-administer with a diuretic agent. So this is how we can overcome the, what you call, the adverse effect of the hydralazine. Okay. Then apart from these, the hydralazine, that is the drug that we have seen here, that is hydralazine, which acts on the vascular smooth muscle. Then coming to its kinetics, that is the metabolism and other related things here. Okay, coming to its kinetics and metabolism. So here, this hydralazine is metabolized by or it is metabolized in two areas, that is gastrointestinal mucosa and another is liver. So the liver will lead to or it catalyzes three types of reactions. One is the acetylation of the hydrogen part of hydralazine. Then next is hydroxylation. Then third is conjugation. Conjugation with glucuronic acid. Glucuronic acid. So these are the uh, three ways how this hydralazine is being metabolized. And if you look into the metabolism, that is products of metabolism, just let me write the structures here. So this is the structure of hydralazine, and this will undergo metabolism to form the acetylated product, that is hydralazine. That is acetylation, means here the NHCOCH3. So is it at acetylation occurs on the hydrazine. So the other thing remains the same. Okay. So this product is called as N-acetyl hydralazine. And the other compound that is formed here is the hydroxylation, that is hydroxylation of the benzene uh, benzene nucleus will take place, and it leads to the formation of hydroxyl derivative. So this is the hydroxyl derivative, that is hydroxyl derivative of hydralazine. Okay, so these are the compounds or the metabolites which are obtained from the hydralazine. See, this hydroxy derivative can further undergo the conjugation. So one is N-glucuronide conjugate. That means the conjugation with the glucuronide takes place, or glucuronic acid takes place at the hydrazine part. Then that is, and another one is O-glucuronide conjugate. Glucuronide conjugate. So in this case, the conjugation of the glucuronic acid with the hydroxy derivative takes place, that is with the hydroxyl group. That's why it is called as O-glucuronide conjugate. So this is with respect to the metabolites that are formed from the hydralazine. See, there is also small quantity, around 2 to 3% of a compound, that is the metabolite hydrazone, is formed, and this is responsible for the neurotoxic effects of hydralazine. So the hydrazone which is formed here is responsible for the neurotoxic effects. The T half of the hydralazine is 2 to 4 hours, and but these 2 to 4 hours can vary, because in case of the slow acetylators, okay, so in case of slow acetylators, the T half seems to be 8 hours, because these slow acetylators means this enzyme which is responsible for this acetylation is seen in these people with lower concentration. That is the enzyme we are going to call it as, that is in case of slow acetylators, the enzyme which is called as N-acetyl transferase. N-acetyl transferase. Okay. This N-acetyl transferase is present in there is lower quantity, thereby the acetylated product is formed in lower concentration or the metabolism is slowed. So in such cases, we have to decrease the dose in slow acetylators, because the drug is available in plenty because of the reduced metabolism. Okay, then the hydralazine can induce a syndrome known as lupus, that is systemic lupus erythematous, okay, which is commonly seen with the slow acetylators. Slow acetylators. So please remember, this is one question that can be asked for JPAT. Okay. So in slow, whether this lupus, systemic lupus erythematous is seen in slow acetylators or fast acetylators while we administer the hydralazine, that you have to remember. Then in case of the, then who are the fast acetylators? So examples for fast acetylators. Okay, fast acetylators. So the here the fast acetylators are, we sometimes call them as rapid acetylators. So these are the examples for this are, that is the 50% of African Americans and whites. So they are the fast accelerators or rapid accelerators. Apart from that, we majority of American Indians, then Eskimos, then the Orientals. So these people are fast oscillators. Okay, right? Then who are slow oscillators? The Asians. Mainly the Asians are slow oscillators, and these people require dose adjustment, and they are susceptible to this syndrome which is called as systemic lupus erythematous. Okay, so this is the thing that you must be cautious while we are giving hydralazine. So we have to see who is the person, whether the person is a slow oscillator or a rapid oscillator. Then coming to the uses of this hydralazine. So hydralazine is used in case of moderate to severe, that is treatment of moderate to severe hypertension. Then reserved in cases where the patient is unable to respond or they fail to respond to stage 2 antihypertensive regimen. So this is the main uses. Then these hydralazine can be given with cardiac glycoside and other vasodilators in the treatment of severe there is congestive heart failure. Okay, and the parenteral hydralazine. So administration of this hydralazine through parenteral route can be used for the management of severe hypertension or if the drug is if the person is unable to take with or through oral route, so cannot be taken through oral route, then you can give the patient through parenteral route. Okay, and another condition is when you need to immediately reduce the blood pressure. So in cases where you need to lower blood pressure immediately, so in such cases you can give this hydralazine through parenteral route. Okay, so these are the uses of the hydralazine. Okay. So